Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about bad carbs versus good carbs. This is a topic that people get confused a lot. People don't understand a lot. They don't understand any of the scientific data, the literature, the epidemiology of any of this. So I'm going to make this a lot simpler for people. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Because people will say that like, oh, well, bad carbs will give you diabetes, they'll make you fat, whatever that happens to mean. They're just like, bad carbs. And you're like, well, what's a bad carb? Well, refined carbs. Well, that's not true. And bad carbs, I mean, people almost make it sound like anything that's a bad carb is going to worship Satan and murder your family in their sleep. You know, bad carbs, there is only one bad carb, and I'm going to get to this in a minute. Now, when we look at it this way, you have to understand, what does refined mean? Refined by man? Refined by animals? Because honey would technically be a carb that's not refined by men, whereas in white rice is. You were to eat 50% of your calories from honey versus 50% of your calories from white rice. Look at the epidemiology, the data. Who do you think is going to be worse off? People who ate the honey. In fact, here's the problem with the whole refined carb thing. Take something like white rice. That is what we think of as a very common refined carb, and then white flour. But white rice. How many cultures that eat white rice as a staple, meaning at least 50% of the calories in that nation or culture come from white rice, 50% or more? What's the diabetes, obesity, and heart disease rates look like in those regions? Pretty low, really low. So there is zero correlation between white rice intake. In fact, there's a negative correlation between white rice intake, diabetes, and obesity. They don't even go hand in hand. There's no association at all. So what the hell are we talking about with refined carbs? We're talking about fructose. All right, it's that simple. When we talk about refined carbohydrates, the one that you need to be worried about, the bad carb, is fructose. And that's only if it's eaten in excess. Well, where in the hell does fructose come from? Where do we get that? High fructose corn syrup, table sugar, honey, fruits if you eat an enormous amount of them. But here's the problem. We go back to the point of a refined sugar is generally what we're talking about, because yeah, excessive fructose. Technically, you could get excessive fructose intake from 20 bananas. But cultures that eat a very large percentage of their food from fruit, a large percentage of their calories from fruit, don't tend to have diabetes. They don't tend to have obesity in those cultures. Why? Simply put, there's a fair amount of fiber and other stuff in the fruit. It seems to blunt some of the negative effects of the fructose. It seems to probably raise the threshold of the amount that you can take in. But fructose is what we need to be concerned about. But again, it seems to be how much concentrated fructose you're getting at once is a concern. Fructose is your bad carb. Everything else is fine. So people get hung up in this, oh, sugar. Well, sugar, that's a general term for any simple carb. And you know what? Every single carb that you eat turns to sugar. Extra protein turns into sugar. So technically, if you're just going to use the word sugar as an all-inclusive thing, brown rice turns into sugar. Almost all of the calories from brown rice turn into sugar in your GI tract. Your liver converts excess protein. So I'm telling you, if you guys are eating more than 100 grams of protein a day, I can promise you a good chunk of your protein you're eating is turning into sugar. Is it hurting you? Probably not. Doesn't seem to be. So that's even the wrong term, because sugar also includes glucose. Glucose is your body's primary fuel source. Your body thrives on glucose. The problem with fructose is that your body can't burn fructose in the state it's in for fuel. So when you start consuming large amounts of fructose, what happens? Anybody know? It goes through a completely different cycle in your body. Because white rice, potatoes, any of that, the starches are broken down in your GI tract and they're absorbed as glucose right into the bloodstream. That's your blood sugar. That's what you have to survive. Your muscles are burning that for fuel. When you're lifting weights, you're burning glucose. Your brain needs glucose. Your brain runs 100% on glucose. All of it. All of your nerves do. Every nerve in your body, including your brain, burn several hundred calories worth of glucose every single day. Only people who can get keto adapted can burn some of it from ketones, and they get brain fog the first couple of weeks doing that because your body prefers glucose as a fuel source. And most of the time, that is all it burns. It's what it prefers. It's your body's preferred fuel source. It is your high octane fuel for most of the cells in your body. Glucose. Fructose goes through a different metabolic process in the body. Your body cannot burn fructose for fuel. Almost no cell in your body, really none of them can. The fructose has to get into the bloodstream. It goes through the liver. It goes through a similar process that alcohol does. So it's interestingly enough, if you look at some of the data and things that have been looked at out there, people who are on very, very high fructose diets get sclerosis of the liver. They get fatty liver, even if they don't drink alcohol, because it's going through the same process. And some of that fructose gets turned into lipids and triglycerides and things by the liver, but it has to change it, and it puts strain on the liver. The liver has to work, and it puts some strain on it to convert it into glucose. You know, people sit here and talk about insulin response. Fructose doesn't use any insulin. Fructose has zero insulin response, just like fat does. Interestingly enough, it doesn't have an insulin response because it's not being transported that way. It has to go to the liver, and your liver picks it up, filters it out, puts it through a process that can turn most of it into glucose, so it turns it into a fuel your body can use. However, the process it goes through in the liver, if excessive amounts are taken in chronically, causes fatty buildup inside your liver, puts strain on your liver, and leads to insulin resistance. All right, it's the insulin resistance from things like fructose and large amounts of saturated fat. Those are what cause diabetes. That's what causes prediabetes. That's what causes hypoglycemia, not because of their insulin response, but because they make your body resistant to insulin due to the processes they go through in the body. Your body starts to become more insulin resistant, which now means it needs to produce more insulin to handle the glucose you take in, and you have to have glucose. All right, people need to stop thinking of sugar and glucose in that regard as something bad. It is essential for performance. It is essential for survival. It is essential for health, and even large amounts of it are fine. Again, people whose diets are primarily glucose-based, again, starches, even refined starches, tend to have fewer health problems. All right, cultures that have that, they don't get fat. In other words, it's really hard to get fat eating potatoes. It's really hard to become diabetic eating potatoes. Think about that for a moment. Really is. Nobody's getting fat from eating oats and potatoes out there. It's all the other crap. And when people think of these bad carbs, think about it. Everyone says, well, I eat bad carbs. Is it really the glucose in there you're concerned about? What do most people eat that are the bad carbs that make them get fat? Cake, cookies, ice cream, sweets, pastries. What's in all those things? Large amounts of fructose, all the sweeteners, combined with either a trans fat or a saturated fat. Ice cream, perfect example, loaded full of saturated fat. What do they put in those cakes, cookies, pastries, all that stuff? They put hydrogenated vegetable oils, which are trans fats. They throw butter and all that in, which is mostly saturated fat, along with sugar. So usually most of those foods are loaded full of saturated fat. They're actually high-fat foods. They're high-fat foods. Most other than light ice creams or fat-free cookies or cake, which are hard to find, they're usually 30% or more fat calories. The majority of they're at least 30% fat calories, all those foods, with a large amount of refined sugars, table sugar. So fructose is usually combined with either trans fats or saturated fat or both to create most of your big sweets and treats that people eat that they're thinking of as really bad carbs. It's a combination. You're getting a plethora of the one bad carb with the two bad fats that are out there, all thrown together. Three of the things that if eaten in excess are dangerous are thrown all together. So of course you feel like crap. Of course you get fat when you eat large amounts of any of that stuff, because you're eating a whole cocktail of bad stuff. It's not just the carbs in isolation. It's not just the carbs in isolation. So when people talk about bad carbs, they need to understand what they're talking about. No one has ever gotten fat, obese, or particularly diabetic due to eating 70% of their calories from potatoes or white rice. It doesn't happen in any culture in the world. All right, it's the double bacon cheeseburgers, the table sugar, the soda. All right, that's what it is. It's this combination of high fructose and a high fat diet combined together. That is your killer. That is what creates most of the obesity in Western countries. That's what creates the diabetes. That's what's creating the heart disease, all this other stuff. It's this combination of these things. So really a bad carb is basically refined sugars. But honey would throw into that also. But you know what? Honey is a refined sugar too. It's just refined by the bees. It is very, very similar to table sugar. You can't tell them apart other than it's got some extra stuff and some antioxidants and other stuff in there, and in some cases it can help with allergies, but I mean it is just table sugar structurally in terms of the fructose to glucose ratio, so it's just table sugar. Not really any healthy other than maybe helping you with your pollen allergies. And I'm not going to knock that. Small amounts of local honey does seem to help with people's allergies. If they have an allergy to a local pollen, local honeys seem to actually help with that. I've seen plenty of people who experience that, but it's not something you want to make a staple in your diet because it is just table sugar at the end of the day. So that's what's up with bad carbs. That's what's going on. We made this a lot easier. Bad carbs, there's only one you need to be worried about, and that's fructose, and that's in excess. Like I said, the odds that you're going to get an excessive amount of fructose from eating watermelon or apples or bananas, probably not going to happen. You're getting it from table sugar, sweets, all this stuff with all this extra refined sugar in, that's where you're going to get it from. Even refined grains aren't particularly bad carbs until you start adding crap to them. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.